The surface world had grown predictable. Wilson P. Hicksbury, scientist and reluctant dimensional traveler, had mastered the forest, the caves, and even the humid sprawl of the archipelago. Yet, the vast, echoing blackness beneath the sea still offered an unplumbed void of terrifying potential. Wilson called it the bathysphere etherea, or simply, the D-Bell. Constructed from salvaged thulecite, reinforced with insulated metal plating, and powered by 3 meticulously wired gears, it was his cage, his vessel, and his umbilical cord to the known world. He sealed the hatch, the final twist of the locking mechanism echoing ominously in the tight space. The D-Bell began its slow, grinding descent. The sunlight, initially a cheerful blue-green, faded rapidly, replaced by a bruised indigo, then a crushing, absolute blackness. The digital pressure gauge screamed silently past 500 fathoms. "Well," Wilson muttered, adjusting his spectacles in the flickering light of the internal vacuum tube, "this is considerably darker than I recall darkness being." His sanity meter, a concept he had long ago internalized, began its familiar, painful dip. The deep was a psychological assault, the crushing weight above, the absolute silence broken only by the hull's stressed groan, the unnerving visual static that seemed to shimmer just at the edge of his vision. He finally reached the designated depth, a vast, flat plain of pulverized volcanic dust, intermittently broken by towering, spindly structures of hydrothermal vents, the black smokers. All around him, the environment was alien, plants that pulsed with cold, sickly light, creatures that were nothing more than jaws and bioluminescence. This was the abyss. The first order of business was to establish the foothold. Wilson activated the heavy external mechanisms of the D-Bell, deploying the anchor system and beginning the crucial, perilous construction of the ablative air node on. The AAN was a pressurized bubble of existence, powered by unstable but potent bathysalт crystals harvested from deep-sea vents. It required constant energy to maintain hydrostatic integrity. If the power failed, the water wouldn't simply rush in, the structure would implode. Days blurred into a cycle of brutal maintenance and nerve-wracking expansion. Wilson, clad in his bulky, pressurized suit, would venture out from the AAN's airlock for tense, 30-minute bursts, hammering thulecite fragments into the base's hull, or carefully chipping away at clusters of glowing gloom coral, a necessary resource but one that radiated unsettling, sanity-draining energy. He had managed to build a small laboratory module and a powered light array, transforming a sliver of the eternal midnight into a fragile, pulsating beacon of civilization. The base was now stabilized, drawing power efficiently, and even managing to filter some of the local jellypod species into an edible, if tasteless, slurry. But survival breeds attention. The deep sea was not empty. It merely waited. It began with the vibrations. Not the usual shiver of a passing gloom stalker, but a low, subterranean hum that resonated through Wilson's very teeth. It didn't belong to the ocean, it belonged to power. He was repairing a faulty segment of the hydroponic vents when the humming intensified, followed by a pressure surge that slammed him against the inner wall of the AAN. Warning lights flashed scarlet, the structural integrity dropped to 60%. Impossible, Wilson wheezed, scrambling for the emergency repair kit. No known current could generate that kind of localized pressure. He risked a glance through the reinforced viewport. The powered lights only reached about 30 feet into the gloom, but within that circle, he saw movement, a displacement of water so profound it looked like a wall of rolling liquid shadow. Then, the eye. It was colossal, dinner plate-sized, flat, and chillingly indifferent, surrounded by a ring of ancient, calcified barnacles. It stared into the on, not with predatory hunger, but with the cold apathy of a geological event. The immense creature used the environment as its weapon. With a sickening, resonant frequency, it generated a hydrostatic shockwave. The on screamed. Wilson realized, with a cold dread that pierced through the scientific curiosity, that this was not a creature to be hunted, it was a phenomenon to be endured. This was the abyssal leviathan, the pressurized horror. He stabilized the on, dumping an entire stack of fresh bathysalт crystals into the generator core, overriding the safety limits. The lights blazed brighter, pushing back the shadows, but also illuminating the leviathan's shape for a fleeting moment. It was a monstrosity unlike anything Maxwell had conjured. A segmented, armored hull reminiscent of an ancient trilobite, mated to the horrific, gaping maw of a colossal anglerfish, its bioluminescent lure trailing hundreds of feet above its head. It was built for the crushing weight of the lower depth, and Wilson's air pocket was an irritating intrusion into its territory. The base was sustainable, but not defensible. The Leviathan knew where the air was, and it treated the on like a persistent, noisy reef that needed to be cleaned. Wilson didn't sleep for the next 3 days. Sanity plummeted. The voices of the shadows hissed in the static outside the viewport, their spectral forms distorted by the water pressure. Survival had turned into an arms race. He needed a deterrent proportionate to the threat. Wilson locked himself in the laboratory module and began synthesizing. He utilized the strongest materials available: processed thulecite fragments, the specialized gears providing immense torque, and the volatile, pitch-black nightmare fuel, the essence of the eternal struggle on the surface, now repurposed for the deep. The result was the hydrostatic harpoon cannon (HHC), a heavy, rotating platform mounted atop the main-on module, capable of firing reinforced, pressure-fused spears charged with concentrated nightmare fuel. The Leviathan provided the opportunity. It was circling again, its massive body kicking up clouds of dust, preparing for another crushing surge. Wilson donned his suit, the movement slow and deliberate. He climbed into the HHC control booth, a terrifyingly exposed glass hemisphere mounted on the AAN's roof. The Leviathan began the charge. The external pressure spiked. Wilson could feel the metal flexing beneath him. Don't panic. Aim scientifically. He focused the HHC's targeting reticule on the creature's most prominent weakness, the soft, highly vascularized membrane connecting the armored segments of its trunk. Come on, you colossal nuisance, Wilson whispered, his voice cracking with dry dread. As the Leviathan closed to striking distance, Wilson activated the primary defense, a powerful flashbang array meant to disorient deep-dwelling creatures accustomed to perpetual darkness. Boom. For a moment, the abyss was painfully bright. The Leviathan hesitated, its immense bulk shuddering. Now, Wilson fired the HHC. The harpoon, thick as a man's leg and propelled by gear-driven compression, shot through the water faster than sound. It struck the connecting tissue with a horrifying, squelching impact. The nightmare fuel stabilizer fractured. The resulting localized explosion was muffled by the water, but the jetting cloud of black vaporized tissue was not. The Leviathan didn't roar, it recoiled. The immense creature convulsed, a wave of displaced water so violent it threatened to tear the HHC right off the base. Wilson gripped the controls, his knuckles white. The Leviathan, wounded and enraged, didn't press the attack. Instead, it executed a maneuver of terrifying speed, its colossal fins pushing it away from the painful light and the shocking blast. It vanished into the black abyss, leaving behind only swirling dust and a trail of faintly glowing, putrid fluid. Wilson sagged against the controls, gasping for the recycled air in his suit. He had won the round, but the silence that followed was heavy, promising a return. He spent the next 2 days repairing the structural damage. He reinforced the HHC with additional thulecite to mitigate recoil and rewired the power grid to ensure immediate blast recovery. His base was now truly sustainable. The glow from the bathassault generators was steady. The air filtration was functional. The hydroponics module was producing edible algae. He had even managed to rig up a series of pressurized traps for the smaller gloom stalkers, converting pests into protein. But the price of this sustainability was eternal vigilance. Wilson stood in the illuminated core of his deep-sea sanctuary, the harsh light reflecting off his tired, triumphant face. He had beaten the forest, the eternal night, and even the madness of Maxwell. Now, he had survived the crushing, indifferent wrath of the deep. He looked out the viewport into the unending darkness. The abyssal Leviathan was hiding now, licking its wounds, waiting for the frail bubble of air and light to fail. The struggle wasn't over. In fact, it had just moved to a new, deeper, and more terrifying front. Wilson adjusted his spectacles, reached for a wrench, and began reinforcing the hull once more. The abyss, he whispered, a tired, manic grin spreading across his face, is merely another engineering problem. And Wilson P. Hixberry, scientist, was ready to solve it.